must be on one of its moons. I swear the afterlife is so random.
Wrong!
Filthy.
So where is this leading us? Well, again, this needs to go if we're going to go anywhere with this, because I'm going into fantastic areas here, but this is where the information has taken me very, very clearly. And the hardest thing to see is what is in front of your eyes, as this man rightly said. The Gnostics talked about the fact that the archons make something appear to happen that does not actually happen. They can induce a virtual reality experience. The Islamic people and pre-Islamic people talk about the jinn manipulating humans by creating illusions. I was in New York in 2010, and someone took me to the subway station for Ground Zero. And when I saw it, it was like, whoa, it hit me big time. There was, first of all, this eyes all along the platforms, but there is this massive depiction of the world on the floor, and then there's an eye, and going out from this eye are these broadcast transmissions. And that hit me so powerfully. Neil Haig was with me, and we kind of looked at each other and said, that's Saturn, isn't it? And remember, physicists have said only this last few days, they may have evidence the universe is a computer simulation. Well, I say that it's a virtual reality, which has been hacked into, and that hack is the reality that we're experiencing, the fake reality. And that hack, I say, comes from Saturn. Because I'm saying that these rings are actually a massive broadcast transmission system which is broadcasting a fake reality within the frequency range that we are decoding, and therefore we are picking up that fake reality. When the Cassini spacecraft arrived at Saturn in 2004, found many things that was unexplainable, you know, things like the hexagon North Pole storm and stuff like that. But they also found extraordinarily powerful sound coming from Saturn. This is part of what they recorded. Nice, man. And I got sent this by a sound engineer, works in sound engineering for a living, and it's one of the rings of Saturn, and he said, I see that every day. That's bloody sound. They're sound waves. And this is in cymatics. This is a six-pointed star. And of course we have the hexagon going round and round and round at Saturn's North Pole. This is a standing wave created by sound, rings. This is at the south pole of Saturn, and it's a permanent ice storm. This is a standing wave created by sound. And these are symbols created by sound, like cymatics. And a certain frequency created this perfect six-pointed star with the hexagon in the middle and the hexagon there. Therefore, the sound creates the frequency, creates the symbol, and in the same way, the symbol represents the sound and the frequency. The symbols are just holographic representations of vibrational waveform states. I would suggest in these symbols cases, representatives of the sound frequency coming off Saturn. Same with all these symbols and numerological manipulations. The sound and the symbol are different expressions of the same thing. Thus, if we, in the holographic realm, are constantly bombarded with these symbols, it is on an energetic level feeding us the frequency field of what they represent. And Saturn, when described pre-cataclysmic, didn't have rings. So where'd they come from? Well, maybe it had rings, but it weren't rings we could see. We can see them now. Well, this guy, Norman Bergeron, has he's in his 90s now, I think. He has a long, long history in space research, technological research, going way back. And his life changed when he started studying the pictures that came back from the Voyager 1 and 2 space expeditions to Saturn. They arrived in 1980-81. Because when he studied them, he realized there was something very strange about Saturn's rings. And he said this in his book, The Ringmakers of Saturn. Several years ago, a number of folks in the astrology and astronomy and physics world began theorizing that these rings had to be much younger than the universe, perhaps only about 100 million years old. But one pair of pictures shows a change in 5 minutes. An impression is conveyed that the latest reported measurements purport to be the true ones, when in reality, all might quite nearly be correct at the time of observation. General reluctance to accept variable ring system geometry occurs because of apparent failure to identify a physical mechanism suitable for producing recurrent change. In other words, classic mainstream science, if we can't explain it, we'll kid ourselves it doesn't exist. And he also found these in the pictures coming back from Voyager, and the Cassini ones found them too. and he calls them electromagnetic vehicles, and they are massive. Some of them several times bigger than the Earth. But again, we need to move our sense of perception. In terms of size representation, this is the Earth against the size of Saturn. We're not talking the same perception of big in terms of outside of the Earth. And here are some of the other pictures of these electromagnetic vehicles picked up by these NASA craft. Why aren't they all in the papers being talked about? You'd think, what the hell is this? No, nothing. Thanks to Bergeron, we've seen their existence. This is the Hubble telescope that's picked one of them up. Look at the size of the bloody thing. And here's a few Cassini spacecraft pictures, still pictures put together. What the hell is that? Exactly what Bergeron was describing from Voyager. And this is the other thing. He found pictures of stuff spewing out of these electromagnetic vehicles into the rings of Saturn and bloody making them or extending them. And what is said to be in the rings of Saturn, I guess thus that's why we can see them, is like ice and stuff. I think, and I would suggest that eventually they will realize that there is a crystal substance being put into those rings that has a dramatic impact on their ability to transmit information. In 2009, NASA released this picture, which is a ring around Saturn, which is from 3.7 million miles out to 7.4 million, and that ring could encompass 1 billion Earths. I suggest that there are rings that we can see, but there are sound rings that we can't see that are coming out across, and we're picking them up. They make something appear to happen that does not actually happen. They can induce a virtual reality experience. The Saturn matrix, as I call it, is a frequency band which we are decoding as a fake reality. And I suggest, my view, we will find that the edge of that frequency band is what we call the speed of light. And beyond it, you go out of the matrix. And when all the genetic tinkering that the ancients talked about went on, the human form was being manipulated to be tuned in to receive and transmit within the frequency band of this Saturn broadcast, and pulling people from a heart state beyond the matrix into an emotional point of interaction massively in the matrix was a major way of tuning us into this fake reality. We talk about people who don't think for themselves as being in the box. Maybe we ought to say that they're in the cube. And they want to shut the heart down, and they have to so many people, because it takes us beyond the bounds of time and space, beyond the matrix, because I suggest that what we call time as we decode it is in this matrix transmission. I'll whip through this quickly because I've talked about this in my books at great length, and I've talked about this at Under London Talks. But I say the moon is a construct or a part construct. This is a book called Who Built the Moon by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler. It's absolutely brilliant in the way that it puts the case for the moon not being real in terms of a natural body. But interestingly, what they find in that book is the mathematics and geometry between the sun, the moon, and the earth are fantastic in terms of their synchronicity, and it does not apply in any way to the rest of the solar system. And the Gnostic writings found in Nag Hammadi in 1945, 1,600 years old or more, say that this is a separate system operating within the Archon system of the inorganic universe. They say in the book, the authors, the maths involved in the Earth, Moon, Sun system is nothing less than staggering, and that the moon has been put there with the accuracy of the proverbial Swiss watchmaker. So when viewed from the Earth, it's the size of the sun at an eclipse. The BBC did a program, Do We Really Need the Moon? And it said the moon is now in a perfect position to sustain life on Earth in its effect on the Earth, but it's just a coincidence. I think not. We only see the near side of the moon. We don't see the far side of the moon. And the authors say in that book, the moon is bigger than it should be, apparently older than it should be, much lighter in mass than it should be. It occupies an unlikely orbit and is so extraordinary that all existing explanations for its presence are fraught with difficulties, and none of them could be considered remotely watertight. The mainstream theory is that the Earth was hit by a Mars-type planet when it was forming, and a chunk came off and became the moon, called the whack theory. That didn't pan out, so they came up with a double whack theory, where it was hit by the planet, it went away and gave it another smack, and then it became the moon. Now, of course, it doesn't pan out because it's nonsense. They don't know. Why don't they just say it's not a bad thing we don't know? There's lots of things we don't know. The best explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon doesn't exist, said this scientist at the Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. It's easier to explain the non-existence of the moon than its existence, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. And you know, I'll go through this because I don't want to run over too much time. I'll just mention a few things about the moon. These two scientists from the Soviet Academy of Sciences wrote a detailed article in 1970 headed, "Is the Moon the Creation of an Alien Intelligence?" And they explained in scientific terms why the moon cannot be a natural body, and in doing so explained all the anomalies that, if it is a natural body, cannot be explained. This guy, Sergeant Wolf, talked at the National Press Club a few years ago and told of his experiences on the inside at NASA, where he saw things like alien bases on the moon and stuff like that. And there's all these towers and strange phenomenon, like this blue light called blue gem or blue dome that they can't explain on the moon. And these artifacts on the moon that clearly are not natural. Look at that one. What the bloody hell is that? They can't explain them, they don't talk about them. These are pictures of what are claimed to be statues on the moon. There's so much we don't know. In symbolic terms, maybe in a bit more than that, the moon is a bit like the Death Star of this big-time insider, George Lucas, in the sense that it's actually some kind of technological construct. And it's my view, as I've said before in previous books, that what the moon is doing, in its present use anyway, is taking this Saturn broadcast and acting as an amplifier to fire it at the Earth, so we get it in massively increased power and therefore effect. It's acting a bit like a dish transmitting information which we're picking up and decoding into a fake reality. Now, 9 months after I'd written that in a book called The Human Race Get Off Your Knees, someone sent me an email from Brazil, I think it was, a lady, and said, "Have you read this book, Earth, by Barbara Marciniak? Because I've just read your book and I think you'd find it interesting." And she sent me some page numbers. Barbara Marciniak is what they call a channel. And lots of channels are not channels. They just think they are. But, you know, if you get a genuine one, then you can get out there and bring information out from other dimensions into this one. You can get some profound information that way. And she's done a lot of great stuff, Barbara Marciniak. I've met her a few times. Anyway, I hadn't read Earth. I'd read the first book that she wrote, but not Earth. Anyway, I sent for it. I went through the page numbers, and I'm like, whoa, this is 9 months after I've said this stuff in Human Race Get Off Your Knees. And this was a channeled book, and this is what was in the book. 1996, I think this came out. The moon is a very powerful electromagnetic computer. The energy from the moon has been beaming electromagnetic frequencies onto the Earth for eons now to maintain the two-stranded DNA. The moon is a satellite that was constructed. It was anchored outside Earth's atmosphere as a mediating and monitoring device, a supercomputer or eye in the sky. Earth must be owned by those who dwell there. However, it is not. You have outside gods, creator energies, who prevent you as a species from having free reign with your kundalini. That's the energy of awakening, in effect. The influence of the moon as a main satellite computer affects all of the Earth. The moon's programs have for eons been of great limitation towards human beings. There are repetitive cycles that the moon creates to which you respond. The tales about the full moon and insanity, madness and heightened bleeding are all quite true. You know that television influences you a great deal. The moon is the same way. And astrologically, just as a very quick aside, when that great rearrangement happened, of course, astrologically, everything changed as well in terms of the influence of the astrological energies upon the human perception, because suddenly all these bodies are in different positions to where they were before. So the Saturn-Moon matrix, as I call it, I say anyway, is generating a frequency band, a fake reality, which we are decoding to be what seems to be a real reality, and the genetic manipulation has tuned us into it and created this cycle of round and round the garden. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, as the guy said in the video. And Neil Haig has this concept of moonopoly, or Saturn moonopoly. And it goes like this. You get up in the morning and you have your breakfast and then you go to work. And then you have your lunch, sandwich normally, and then I go to work and then I go home and then I have my tea and then I watch a bit of telly and then I go to bed. Then I get up and I go to work and then I have my lunch, sandwich normally. And I mean, look at us. We are infinite consciousness, infinite awareness. All there is, has been, and ever can be. Is that all we are capable of? No. But we are locked into these cycles to which we respond. No response. See it as you couldn't see it before. An end to work, buy, consume, die. That's what that is. And this matrix creates a firewall that holds us from seeing further into the energy field and holds us in this tiny frequency band we call visible light. What they've done is taken the universal energy field, the universal construct, and they have hijacked, hacked into it, and they're feeding a fake reality to us from within that construct. And therefore it's gold. Oh, my life's at a terrible state. I'm just making adjustments to my life. Oh, life's great. And they're all fricking illusions. We're like in this wall. You know those scientists that have been suggesting in the last few days that the universe might be a computer simulation? They actually said, like a prisoner in a pitch black cell, we may never be able to see the walls of our prison. Why? Because they are vibrational walls, and I suggest that they are the speed of light. Which is not the fastest speed. Sorry, Einstein, mate. It's pedestrian. We're talking all possibility, darling. And so when we look into the night sky, are we seeing what's real or are we seeing a projection? I talked in I think it was my last book or the one before that. I had a profound experience as a little boy when I was first taken to the London Planetarium, when I looked and saw the night sky on the roof of the planetarium, and it looked so bloody real. And it hit me, and it's never left me, that actually when I look at the night sky, that ain't actually what I'm looking at. Firewall. All that we see or seem is just a dream within a bigger dream. Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in the landslide, no escape from reality. Open your eyes, look at the skies and see. Is it a sky? Or is it a projection? And so, when we come to the Matrix, and this scene in the Matrix, I call it the Saturn moon matrix, maybe connected to other things we don't know yet. This is so real, and so the world we live in. If you add two words, the Saturn moon matrix is everywhere. It is all around us, even now in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neil. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Archon world. We live in Archon world. I'm going to bring this down now before we have a break. I'll bring this down into the world that we live in now. This guy, a great cosmologist who knew far more than he was saying or was allowed to say, Carl Sagan, he wrote a book, The Dragons of Eden, in which he talked about the fundamental importance of understanding the reptilian impact of reptilian genetics on human behavior. Because the reptilian brain fundamentally affects human behavior. And I suggest that before the genetic tinkering, either that wasn't there or was nothing like as powerful as it is now. And I came across these books after I was a long way down the line. I came across these books by Carlos Castaneda, in which he was quoting a Central American shaman called Don Juan Matters. And when I read some of the stuff in these books that this shaman had said, it was like, whoa, we talk about confirmation. He talks about the archons and the jinn in exactly the same terms, but he calls them the flyers. But they're the same entities. And this is what he said about them in the books. We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our Lord and Master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands we don't do so. Indeed, we are held prisoner. They took over us because we are food to them, energy. And they squeeze us mercilessly because we are their sustenance. Just as we rear chickens in coops, the predators rear us in human coops, human eros. Therefore, their food is always available to them. The Matrix is a computer-generated dream world built to keep us under control in order to change a human being into this. Think, Matters said for a moment, and tell me how you would explain the contradictions between the intelligence of man the engineer and the stupidity of his systems of belief, or the stupidity of his contradictory behavior. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of beliefs, yes, our ideas of good and evil, our social mores. They are the ones who have set up our dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. It is the predator who makes us complacent, routinary, and egomaniacal, feeding the wolf. In order to keep us obedient and meek and weak, the predators have engaged themselves in a stupendous maneuver. Stupendous, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist, a horrendous maneuver from the point of those who suffer it. They gave us their mind. The predator's mind is baroque, contradictory, morose, filled with the fear of being discovered any minute now. They gave us their mind, and that, I suggest, is how they've done it. And they also, more than gave us our mind, they gave us their frequency via junk or non-coding DNA. We are at last, hallelujah, brother and sister, having mainstream scientists seeing the blatant, beyond belief, obvious that 98% of DNA, which they have called junk because they didn't know what it did and said it had no function, actually does, stands back in amazement, have a function. And in that 98% of DNA, non-coding DNA, are programs, behavior programs, perception programs, emotional programs that if we are not beyond mind-body conscious, we lock into and they become us. People in that state, I suggest, it is very possible, and I say highly likely, they can go through an entire human lifetime and not have an original thought or emotional response that isn't coming from the program. This is Boston University and Harvard Medical School research. They examined 37 DNA sequences containing at least 50,000 base pairs and one with 2.2 million base pairs. Lead researcher Eugene Stanley. Non-coding DNA sequences do contain a structured language fundamentally unlike the coding in genes. We therefore need to consider the possibility that the junk DNA may carry some kind of message. Yes, it does, many. And one of them is the human control system when we're pulled into body-mind. Russian DNA research. It appears that the languages we were looking for are in fact hidden in the 98% junk DNA contained in our own genetic apparatus. The basic principle of these languages is similar to the language of holographic images based on the principles of laser radiations of the genetic structures which operate together as a quasi-intelligent system. And this recent announcement by this institute at the Harvard Medical School, all data that humanity creates in a year can be stored on 4 grams of DNA. That's how much information we have in the human structure. And therefore, if you can put emotional programs, emotional response programs into the into the genetic structure and then created a society designed to constantly trigger those programs, then you can have a massive, constantly recurring tidal wave of low vibrational emotional energy. And when you, to feed off, and when you go beyond the body, like with Jill Bolte-Taylor earlier, or these near-death experiences, what is the common theme when they go beyond the body? I felt calm, at peace, I just was. There was no thought pattern and no human emotion. Because so much of it is coming from the body. It's a program. And when you go into the heart and you go beyond time and space, you stop reacting in the sense of the program, and you stop delivering the food, the sustenance of that which is behind it. I did not judge and did not feel I was judged. I loved being in that painless state of existence. And if you want to feed off human energy, low vibrational, if you've got these programs within the human genetic structure generating that energy, well, you're home and bloody dry. This is the mind that we've been connected to. Why do rules have power over our minds? It's all about rules, because it's all about control. And this part of the brain, the reptilian brain, where we get cold-blooded behavior, territoriality, desire to control, right is might, and all that stuff, might is right, that is massively part of the reaction system. Because the reptilian brain is about survival. It's about constantly scanning the environment for threats to survival, not just physical survival, but survival financially, survival of the job, survival of the relationship. Be afraid, be very afraid, because the big band of monsters coming as soon as we've invented him. This is why we're constantly given reasons to be frightened, because that locks us into the reptilian brain and therefore into this collective mind. And Don Juan Matus said, I know that even now, though you never have suffered hunger, you have food anxiety, which is none other than the anxiety of the predator who fears that at any moment now its maneuver is going to be uncovered and food is going to be denied. Through the mind, which after all is their mind, the predators inject into the lives of human beings whatever is convenient for them, and they ensure in this manner a degree of security to act as a buffer against their fear. Sorcerers of ancient Mexico reasoned that man must have been a complete being at one point, with stupendous insights, feats of awareness that are mythological legends nowadays. Absolutely. And then everything seems to disappear, and we have now a sedated man. What I'm saying is that what we have against us is not a simple predator. It is very smart and organized. It follows a methodical system to render us useless. Man, the magical being that he is destined to be, yes, and she, is no longer magical. He's an average piece of meat. There are no more dreams for man than the dreams of an animal who is being raised to be a piece of meat, trite, conventional, imbecilic. Control of perception. And if you look at the Avatar movie, it is so symbolic, because you had the Heart Society, and it was taken over. This connected society of greater awareness was taken over by this left brain, merciless, heartless invasion by symbolically Earth troops with their technology and all that stuff. And you even had the symbolism of these invaders infiltrating the Blue People Society by operating inside an outer shell of blue people so that they didn't know that they were being infiltrated. Now, are we as a human race, there are 7 billion of us now and more, the number of people in full knowledge who are behind this are tiny, tiny. And they can only do it by dividing and ruling us. Are we going to stand up, come together and face this, or look the other bloody way and go on walking into a level of enslavement that would make George Orwell bloody wince? As Martin Luther King said, a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. Freedom is the sure possession of those alone who have the courage to defend it.
That's all I have to say about that.
Bye, have a beautiful time.